Pete and the Vegetable Soup by Yael, Assaf, illustrated by Amitai. This is the front of the book, the spine of the book, and the back of the book. Pete and the Vegetable Soup. The title page, Pete and the Vegetable Soup by Yael, Assaf, illustrated by Amitai. There was once a boy whose name was Pete. Pete was just an ordinary sort of boy, and like all children, he loved to eat candy and play ball. Pete also liked to turn himself into all kinds of things. He liked to turn himself into a horse, into an airplane, into a kite, and even into a telephone. One day, Pete's grandmother wanted to make some soup, but there were no vegetables in the house. So Grandma said, "Pete, please go down to the store and buy some vegetables for the soup." Beep, beep, Pete honked. At exactly that moment, he had turned himself into a bus. How can a bus buy vegetables for soup? What will they think in the store if I walk in and go, beep, beep, with my horn? They'll get an awful fright. It would be scary to see a bus in a store, agreed Grandma. So she went to the store herself and bought vegetables for the soup. When she got back home, she washed the vegetables, cut them into little pieces, and put everything into a pot. Pete went on playing. "Pete, please take the margarine out of the refrigerator," asked Grandma. "Meow, meow," purred Pete. At exactly that moment, he had turned himself into a greedy cat. How can a greedy cat take margarine out of the refrigerator? He'll gobble up everything inside. That would be terrible. That would be terrible, agreed Grandma. So she walked over to the refrigerator and took out the margarine herself. She added the margarine to the vegetables, and she also put in some salt. Finally, she added water, mixed everything up together, and put the pot on the stove. And Pete went on playing. Grandma tasted the soup while it was cooking and decided to add some rice to make it even tastier. "Pete, please give me the jar of rice. It is in the closet," said Grandma. "Tweet, tweet," chirped Pete. At exactly that moment, he had turned himself into a little bird. "How can a little bird give you rice?" asked Pete. "On my way from the closet to you, it would peck at all the grains of rice, and there won't be any rice left for the soup. That would be really terrible." "Perhaps I really shouldn't ask a bird to do me a favor like that," said Grandma. So she went over to the closet and took out the jar of rice herself. She washed the rice, dried it, fried it in a frying pan on a high flame, and then added some water. Meanwhile, the soup in the pot was bubbling away on a low flame. When the rice was ready, the soup was ready too. Grandma turned off the high flame and the low flame and sat down to read the newspaper and relax. The aroma of good soup spread through the whole house. Pete stopped playing and walked over to his grandmother. "Grandma, guess what I've turned into now?" asked Pete. His grandma didn't answer. "Now I'm a hungry boy. May I have some soup?" asked Pete. His grandmother continued reading the newspaper and didn't say a word. "Grandma, what's the matter? Why aren't you answering me?" Pete was beginning to worry. "I can't answer because I've turned into a giraffe," said Grandma at last. "How can a giraffe talk? And how can it serve soup?" Pete thought for a moment, and then he began to toot. Toot, toot. At first he made a quiet toot, and then it got louder and louder until the toot turned into a train whistle. Then Pete said, "Grandma, would you like me to ride over to the sink so I can wash up the dirty dishes?" Pete's grandmother smiled. "Yes, that would be nice," she said. "But first eat some vegetable soup with rice, so you'll be big and strong for your work." Grandma gave Pete a bowl of soup, and Pete ate it all up. And he didn't leave a single drop.